The sound of her palm connecting with my cheek echoed through the backyard, silencing every conversation at my graduation party. I stood there, hand pressed against my stinging face, watching my stepmother's perfectly manicured fingers curl into a fist at her side. My name is Amanda Parker, and what should have been one of the proudest moments of my life, graduating summa cum laude from business school, had just turned into a viral scandal, though I didn't know it yet. How dare you? Victoria screamed again, her face contorted with rage. After everything we've done for you, you selfish little brat. The party guests, my friends, professors, and family members, stood frozen, phones raised, capturing every moment of Victoria's meltdown. My father, as usual, stood slightly behind her, his face a mask of discomfort, but taking no action to defend his only daughter. I should have seen this coming. The signs had been there all morning. Victoria had been oddly interested in my graduation ceremony, considering she'd skipped every other milestone in my life since marrying my dad 5 years ago. She'd even insisted on hosting this backyard party, something completely out of character for a woman who'd once told me that celebrating others' achievements was wasteful. Now I knew why. I won't ask again, she hissed, stepping closer. Sign over the trust fund. Your grandmother would have wanted us to have access to it. We're family. I almost laughed at that. Family? Victoria had spent the last 5 years systematically trying to erase every trace of my late mother and grandmother from our lives. She'd redecorated the house, disposed of family photos, and even tried to convince my father to change my last name to match hers. No, I said firmly, straightening my shoulders. Grandma left that money to me for my future. She was very clear about her wishes. Victoria's eyes narrowed. Your father needs that money for his business. Don't you care about your father's success? I looked at my dad, still standing silently behind his wife. He'd been different since marrying Victoria, more distant, more willing to let her make all the decisions. The successful architect I'd grown up admiring had become a shadow of himself. Dad's business is doing fine, I replied, my voice steady despite my racing heart. The quarterly reports show. How dare you spy on our finances? Victoria screeched, raising her hand again. This time, I caught her wrist before she could strike. Don't, I warned quietly. There are witnesses. She yanked her hand away, but not before I saw something flash in her eyes. Fear? Good. She should be afraid. What Victoria didn't know was that I hadn't just been studying business management at university. I'd been investigating her too. Every mysterious withdrawal from my father's accounts, every suspicious transfer, every questionable business decision that had started right after she married him. I had documented it all. Amanda, my father finally spoke, his voice weak. Maybe we should discuss this inside, as a family. No, Dad, I said, my heart breaking a little at how easily he still fell into her manipulation. We're going to discuss this right here, in front of everyone. I reached into my graduation gown and pulled out a folder, the same folder Victoria had demanded I bring to the party, thinking it contained the trust fund paperwork. Instead, it held something far more interesting. You want to talk about money, Victoria? Let's talk about the Peterson account. Her face went white. The Peterson account, my father's biggest architectural client, had mysteriously pulled their business 6 months ago. Or at least that's what Victoria had told everyone. Or should we discuss the offshore account you opened in the Cayman Islands? The one you've been funneling Dad's money into for the past 3 years? She's lying, Victoria snapped, but her voice trembled slightly. Daniel, she's trying to turn you against me, just like her mother always tried to. Don't you dare talk about my mother. I cut her off, my voice ice cold. Mom would have seen through you in an instant, just like Grandma did. That's why my grandmother had set up the trust fund the way she did, making it completely inaccessible to anyone but me, with strict conditions about when and how it could be used. She'd seen something in Victoria that others had missed. I have proof, I continued, opening the folder. Bank statements, transfer records, even recordings of your conversations with Dad's clients where you redirected their payments to your personal account. The party guests were dead silent now, many still recording. Out of the corner of my eye, I saw my best friend Jessica give me an encouraging nod. She'd helped me gather much of this evidence, using her internship at the bank to legally access public records. Victoria's carefully constructed facade was cracking. Daniel, she pleaded, turning to my father. She's lying. She's jealous of our happiness, just like you said she'd be. But for the first time in years, my father wasn't looking at Victoria. He was looking at the documents I'd spread out on the patio table. His architect's eye, trained to notice details, was finally seeing the truth. These signatures, he said slowly. They're forged. Of course they are, I said gently. Victoria's been forging your signature for years, on contracts, on bank documents, even on the papers that dissolved your partnership with Mr. Peterson. No, Victoria's voice rose hysterically. Daniel, remember what we discussed about Amanda's mental health, about how she invents stories? That was her biggest mistake. My father's head snapped up, confusion crossing his face. What? We never discussed Amanda's mental health. Because there was nothing to discuss, I said, pulling out one final document. But Victoria did try to schedule me for a psychiatric evaluation last month, without my knowledge or consent. She forged your signature on that too, Dad. The look on my father's face was heartbreaking, the slow dawn of realization, the pain of betrayal, the horror of understanding just how thoroughly he'd been manipulated. Security footage from the bank, I continued, laying out screenshots, shows Victoria accessing your safety deposit box on days you were out of town. Phone records, showing calls to all your major clients, followed by mysterious contract cancellations.
But
And my personal favorite, emails to a divorce lawyer, planning how to get control of your assets once she'd completely isolated you from everyone who cared about you. Victoria lunged for the documents, but several party guests stepped forward, blocking her path. Among them was Mr. Peterson himself. I'd invited him specifically for this moment. Daniel, Mr. Peterson said gravely, we need to talk about what really happened with that hospital project. Victoria's perfectly made-up face crumpled. She turned to run, but two police officers, quietly called by Jessica when the confrontation began, stepped through the garden gate. Mrs. Parker, one officer said formally, we'd like to ask you some questions about certain financial discrepancies. As they led Victoria away, I finally let myself exhale. 5 years of watching, waiting, gathering evidence, protecting my grandmother's legacy, it had all led to this moment. My father stood amid the scattered documents, looking lost and devastated. Amanda, he whispered, I'm so sorry. I should have. I know, Dad, I said, taking his hand. I know. What none of us knew then was that at least 3 different guests had uploaded videos of the confrontation to social media. By morning, Victoria's slap, my revelation, and her subsequent arrest would be trending across multiple platforms. But that was just the beginning of how this video would change everything. The party guests slowly began to disperse, many stopping to hug me or shake my hand. My professors looked proudly on. My final project on financial fraud investigation had been inspired by my own family drama, though they hadn't known it at the time. As the sun set on what should have been just my graduation party, I watched my father talking quietly with Mr. Peterson, already beginning to rebuild the partnerships Victoria had destroyed. The trust fund my grandmother had left me was safe, but more importantly, my father was free from Victoria's manipulation. My phone buzzed with a text from Jessica. Check Twitter, you're going viral. I smiled, knowing that Victoria's carefully constructed image was about to crumble in ways she never imagined. But that was just the beginning of the story. The morning after my graduation party, I woke up to over 100,000 notifications. The video of Victoria slapping me had gone viral overnight, but it wasn't just the slap that caught people's attention. It was what happened next. Trust fund daughter exposes stepmom's $1 million scam, read one headline. Business graduate uses skills to save father's company, read another. My phone wouldn't stop ringing with calls from news outlets and morning shows wanting interviews. But the most interesting call came from Diana Reynolds, a financial investigator with the FBI. Miss Parker, she said, her voice crisp and professional, your stepmother's case has opened up a much larger investigation. Would you be willing to come in and discuss what you've found? I looked across the kitchen table at my father, who was still shell-shocked from yesterday's revelations. He nodded slowly, encouraging me to go. At the FBI office, Diana spread out files that made my careful investigation look amateur. Victoria Monroe, she said, using my stepmother's maiden name, or should I say Victoria Reynolds, or perhaps Victoria Chen. She's been doing this for years. My stomach dropped as Diana showed me photographs of different women, all bearing a striking resemblance to Victoria, all with different names, all married to successful businessmen who mysteriously lost everything. 3 different identities, 3 different victims before your father, Diana explained. But she got sloppy this time. She didn't count on a stepdaughter with a business degree and access to financial records. What happens now? I asked, staring at the evidence of Victoria's past lives. Now, Diana smiled. We build a case, and we'd like your help. Over the next few weeks, my graduation video continued to circulate, gaining more traction as Victoria's previous victims started coming forward. Each story was similar, a whirlwind romance, followed by subtle manipulation, financial control, and eventually complete asset theft. My father threw himself into rebuilding his business, seeming to age backward as he freed himself from Victoria's influence. Mr. Peterson not only returned as a client, but brought new contacts with him. Your daughter saved more than just your business, Daniel. I overheard him saying, she saved you. But Victoria wasn't going down without a fight. Her lawyer reached out, offering a deal. If we dropped the charges, she'd reveal where she'd hidden some of my father's missing money. Not a chance, I told the FBI, we'll find it ourselves. And we did. My business school professors connected me with forensic accountants who specialized in tracking hidden assets. Together, we followed Victoria's money trail across continents, uncovering accounts and properties purchased with stolen funds. The viral video had unexpected consequences too. Women from across the country started reaching out, sharing similar stories of financial abuse and manipulation. A support group formed organically in the video's comments section, with victims helping victims. Jessica, who'd been quietly recording everything at the graduation party, started a podcast about financial fraud awareness. You're not just taking down Victoria, she told me during one episode, you're helping people protect themselves from others like her. But the biggest surprise came from an unexpected source. One morning, a sleek black car pulled up to our house. An elegant woman in her 60s stepped out. I recognized her immediately from Diana's files. Mrs. Chen, I asked, using the name Victoria had used when she married her first victim. Margaret, please, she said, her eyes kind but determined. I saw your video. I've spent 10 years being ashamed of how she deceived me. You gave me the courage to fight back. Margaret had been a successful restaurant owner when she met Victoria. After losing everything, she'd rebuilt from scratch, now owning a chain of successful establishments. I have records, she said, pulling out a thick folder. Bank statements, property deeds, everything from when she was Victoria Chen. I kept it all too afraid to use it, until now. With Margaret's evidence, combined with what we'd already gathered, the case against Victoria became ironclad. But something still bothered me. Why did she push so hard for my trust fund? I asked Diana during one of our meetings. She had already stolen so much from Dad. Diana's expression turned serious. Because your trust fund wasn't just money, it was exposure. The conditions your grandmother set required annual audits and oversight. If Victoria had gained control, the audits would have exposed everything. I finished, feeling a fresh wave of gratitude for my grandmother's foresight. That evening, going through old family photos, I found one of my grandmother at my high school graduation. She was watching Victoria, not the ceremony, her expression knowing and worried. Even then, she'd been protecting me. The sound of breaking news interrupted my thoughts. Victoria's face filled the TV screen. She'd been arrested trying to board a flight to the Cayman Islands with fake documents. Breaking news, viral video lead to major fraud bust, scrolled across the bottom of the screen. They showed clips from my graduation party, followed by interviews with Victoria's previous victims. Margaret was among them, standing proud and unashamed. My father walked in as the news played, placing a hand on my shoulder. Your mother would be so proud, he said softly. She always said you had her intuition, and your grandmother's strength. I covered his hand with mine, feeling the weight of everything we'd been through, everything we'd survived. Victoria had tried to tear our family apart, but in the end, she'd only made us stronger. My phone buzzed with a text from Jessica. Check your email. You're going to want to see this. The email Jessica wanted me to see was from the publisher of Financial Times. They wanted to feature my story, not just about exposing Victoria, but about the growing movement it had inspired. From Trust Fund to Truth Finder, how one graduate's stand against financial abuse went viral would be their cover story. But more importantly, they wanted me to write a regular column about financial fraud awareness and protection. My first piece would coincide with Victoria's trial. The courthouse was packed on the first day of proceedings. Victoria sat at the defendant's table, her designer outfit replaced by simple business attire, her usual perfect makeup, notably subdued. She didn't look at me as I took the stand. "Miss Parker," her lawyer began, "isn't it true that you harbored resentment toward Mrs. Parker from the beginning? That this whole investigation was driven by jealousy?" I smiled, remembering Victoria's similar accusations at my graduation party. "No," I replied calmly. "This investigation was driven by bank statements, forged documents, and witness testimonies, including those of her 3 previous husbands. The evidence was overwhelming. Margaret and the other victims testified about Victoria's pattern of deception. Financial experts detailed her complex money laundering schemes. Even Victoria's own lawyer looked defeated as the prosecution presented document after document. But the moment that truly ended Victoria's chances came from an unexpected source: my father. "She didn't just steal my money," he testified, his voice strong and clear. "She tried to steal my relationship with my daughter. She tried to make me doubt my own child's integrity. That's the real crime here." Victoria's carefully crafted facade finally cracked. She stood up, pointing at me accusingly. "You think you're so clever with your business degree and your trust fund," she spat, "but you don't know anything about survival." The judge ordered her to sit down, but Victoria had shown her true colors to everyone in the courtroom. The verdict came swiftly: guilty on all counts. Victoria was sentenced to 15 years in prison and ordered to pay restitution to all her victims. As they led her away, she turned to glare at me one last time. I simply smiled and waved goodbye. Outside the courthouse, surrounded by reporters, I announced the launch of the Parker Foundation, a nonprofit organization dedicated to helping victims of financial abuse. The trust fund my grandmother had protected would now protect others. "Your grandmother knew exactly what she was doing," Margaret told me at the foundation's opening ceremony. "She protected you so you could protect others." My father, standing nearby, had tears in his eyes. He donated the first major contribution to the foundation, matching my trust fund dollar for dollar. "Making things right," he'd said simply. Jessica's podcast had evolved into a full-time position with the foundation, hosting workshops about financial literacy and fraud prevention. The viral video that started it all had accumulated over 10 million views, becoming a case study in business ethics classes nationwide. 1 year after my graduation party confrontation, I stood at a podium accepting an award for outstanding achievement in consumer protection. Looking out at the audience, I saw my father, sitting proudly in the front row. Behind him were Margaret and other survivors, each now successful in their own right. Even Mr. Peterson was there, his architecture firm now partnering with the foundation to build shelters for abuse survivors. "Sometimes," I said in my acceptance speech, "it takes one moment of courage to expose years of deception. Sometimes, a single stand against injustice can inspire others to stand up too. And sometimes, what seems like an ending, like a graduation day confrontation, is really just the beginning." My phone buzzed one last time that evening, a message from Diana, at the FBI. Victoria had tried to run a scheme from inside prison, attempting to manipulate another inmate's finances. This time, thanks to our foundation's monitoring system, she was caught immediately. I smiled, tucking my phone away. Victoria had underestimated me, just as she'd underestimated my grandmother. She thought she was destroying our family, but instead, she'd helped create something stronger, a movement that would protect countless others from people like her. Looking out from my office window at the foundation's headquarters, I could see the sign we'd chosen: "Trust in Truth," a reminder that sometimes the best revenge isn't just exposing lies, but using that exposure to build something meaningful. My grandmother would have been proud.